Welcome to the Clonestar Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Pickens, and you've just stepped into another mind-bending episode of Voyager, the Greatest Voyages, our deep dive into the wildest, weirdest, and most unforgettable two-parters of Star Trek Voyager. Today, we're getting into some serious temporal shenanigans, and for good reason. We're diving into two standout stories that push the boundaries of identity, consent, and reality. First up, Future's End, where the crew is catapulted back to 1996 Earth to face off with a tech tycoon threatening the space-time continuum. Then, Workforce, a quiet dystopia where our crew wakes up with no memories and new lives, content, compliant, and completely unaware of who they once were. In this episode, we'll explore the power and danger of rewriting the past or erasing the self. Janeway and Chote's layered relationship in altered realities, and what Trek teaches us about the slippery line between truth and illusion. And thankfully, I'm not making this journey alone. Today, we're beaming in for this time-warping adventure the brilliant minds behind the Duras Sisters Podcast, Ashlyn and Rhianna.
Hello. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No,
I got
good.
too excited.
No, I'm excited to have you. So this is great.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Their podcast honors the characters and storylines that make Star Trek legendary. Their weekly discussion explore every Trek series through rotating themes, taking fans from the original series to strange new worlds. It's the Trek fix you didn't know you needed. Rhianna Fields is a writer, activist, and sustainability nerd with a master's in English from DePaul University. She spends her time crafting poetry, reading sci-fi, and imagining a Starfleet-worthy future. Ashlyn Gelman is a library administrator by day and opera singer by night, with degrees in classical vocal performance. She sung with top orchestras and opera houses, but her heart belongs to Janeway, Picard, and all things Trek and nerdy. So brace yourself, the time stream is unstable, and the stakes are personal. Let's jump in. Hi guys, thanks for being here.
Hello.
So,
Thank you for that introduction. We are
you're
so
welcome.
excited to be here. Oh my gosh.
Great. I love it.
I mean, literally, when we got messages from y'all about like, hey, you want to talk about Voyager? We're like, yes. Like,
Yes,
we don't
right?
care what Voyager we want to talk about. Yes.
Wonderful. I'll keep that in mind because I could talk about Voyager for days. So
Yes,
I
us
understand.
too. Yeah.
I'm going to just ask a question right off the bat. First about your podcast, the Duras Sisters. Those are some intense lady Klingon warriors.
Yes.
What made you land on the title for the podcast as the Duras Sisters?
I think we were trying to go for the angle because we are sisters in real life. I am 2.5 years older, for those of you wondering. Because a lot of people can't tell, and they ask
we're
if
the
we're
same
twins.
height. Yeah.
Yes, we're the exact same height. So I think we were trying to go for the sister angle, and you think about sisters in Star Trek. There's really only
Not
the
a
Duras
lot.
sisters. I
Right.
mean, the Delaney sisters have a very
Yes.
small,
Right.
like mention.
Yeah.
But that's too niche. And already the Duras sisters are pretty niche. Like you have to know Star Trek
Yes.
enough to know who they are. So with that in mind, like we're for a niche audience,
Yeah.
people who love Star Trek. But I think we really lean into the Klingon roles as much as possible, and we try to let our Klingon personas out
Nice.
as much as we can. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Good. I love that because they were a lot of fun in the Star Trek universe.
Some of the best sisters. Yeah.
Right.
We always joke that Ashlyn's Lursa, I'm Betor,
Yeah.
We have our
Yes.
You've got your
have our
identities.
roles.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's great. Well, I love it. And I encourage people to tune into what you guys are doing on the podcast because it's a lot of fun and perfect for a Trekkie. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm going to get us started with just a quick question. If you got stuck in an alternate timeline without memory of your real life, would you want to be found?
I'm going to go with yes.
Yeah.
I would want to be found.
Yeah.
I think that even if I just feel like deep down, you're always going to think something is a little bit off or a little bit wrong.
Mhm.
And I just know myself, and like I would know something is wrong, and if I was never found, I just had to chill in an alternate reality, I would just die like not knowing.
Yep.
And that would bother me. So I would hope that somebody will come and find me.
Yeah. Like that internal instinct in somewhere is innate, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just feel like we're on the wrong road. Yeah.
The wrong timeline here. Yeah.
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 I agree. Same for you, Rhianna?
Yeah, same for me. My other reasoning is that I'd have to figure out my sexuality again, and that took way too long the first time. I'm not interested in dating men again for a while, then figuring out that that's not for me.
But maybe you'd have that instinct already.
Maybe I just you'd be like, with the ladies. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Who knows? But either way, I think I would miss my cats and miss my wife, and I would not know what I was missing, like you said, Ashlyn. And I don't know if it would be a situation where like with Tom and B'Elanna where they're like kind of together so they fall in love again almost.
Right,
but
right.
So if my wife were there, that'd be cool. But like I just don't think that would be possible.
Bring them along. I get it.
Yeah.
What about you, Jody?
I think the same. I think there's a sense of community or connection that we have. You know, if alternate timelines do exist out there, I'd like to think that we have a grounding or a root to this primary life that and I mean, I hope it's the primary life. I mean, I don't want to make assumptions, but I do
get worried sometimes. I'm like, I don't know. I think there might have been a bad turn a couple of years ago. Like, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I have recently been questioning that a lot lately too. Yep. So I understand completely. So I don't know. I think it's fun to think about. And of course, Star Trek likes to play in the alternate universe and temporal shifts and quite often, which it's fun to see our characters in that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So first up, we're going to talk about Future's End. And just a little overview on that. This is the episode where Voyager is pulled back to Earth in 1996, where they must prevent a 29th century time ship stolen by a tech magnate, Henry Starling, from triggering a temporal catastrophe. So cue the hacker vans, the vintage internet, and an unusually chipper Janeway and Chote pairing, navigating 20th century chaos. I think if you're a Voyager fan, this is a fun episode for everyone. So,
yes.
And it was fun to see them kind of put into the Delta Quadrant and then suddenly, boom, right here back at Earth in 20th century time, which was modern times for the episode. So I thought, it's clever the way they did that.
Yeah,
it was funny.
Go, Ashley.
I was watching this episode to review for the pod, and my husband came in, and he was like, "Isn't Voyager's whole thing that they're stranded in the Delta Quadrant? Like, what are they doing in LA?" And I'm like, you've really reached the crux
of this episode.
Of this episode, like you want to sit down. So it's a great concept. Like, how do we get Voyager back to Earth? Here you go. Some timey-wimey chronoton stuff.
Yeah. Totally. They're so close and so far. I think that's the other thing that really hurts my heart in this episode is like they wanted to get back to Earth and here they are, but it's not the right time. Like,
Yeah.
It was fun, too, because like obviously I'm sure for budget reasons that was a great episode to film because, I mean the outfits are completely 90s, everything was just so 1996 to a T.
Perfection.
Right. And it was fun.
Janeway's suit is iconic for me in this episode. It's its own character.
It literally is.
She's walking around doing her investigations, and I'm like, okay, queen. She just looks so good in that suit. Yeah. She's
like the ultimate like power corporate female, right? Like she's just here, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Get out of my way, right?
Literally. That's what I love so much about time travel episodes is because they usually go back to the time that the episode's coming out. Yeah. And so that's really fun because you get to explore how our Trek characters would handle our time period that the watchers are currently experiencing. I think that's such a cool idea.
It is.
Well, and it worked really well with Voyage Home. So I think that's a
yes, that was
easy concept to copy paste, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. Star Trek doesn't do that, do they? They don't.
Yeah, what?
They don't copy. They don't copy and paste.
No.
Well, talking about the culture and the technology, because that's really so much what this was about. How do you feel Future's End captured that kind of 1990s tech fears, I guess is the best way to put it, and then still have it like represent the capital excess that was still building and primary during that era?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 1998, so I wasn't like a part of this era really as my own life, but like looking back on it now, I think it shows how much there's like paranoia and hyper tech like this time was, you know, there's that mix, a kind of interesting mix of paranoia and teching the world sort of. And I thought particularly with what the US is going through currently, what it was going through back then with technology, with the particular emphasization on privatization of tech was really important here, because I think it paved the way for a lot of things that we're seeing right now with like Elon and Bezos and Zuckerberg and like all of these kind of private and monopolies and that kind of stuff. So I was really impressed by how they're able to kind of paint that broad picture of how tech and paranoia really like kind of almost work together in this. Yeah.
I think also it's trying to show both sides of the fear, because you think about, you know, computers are becoming more mainstream and Bill Gates is doing his thing, you know, like technology is increasing so rapidly that of course Trek has to do a you know, a fear, like a oh, this is what could happen, because that's kind of also part of what Trek is warning us about things coming up in the future. They talk about like after the quake of Hermosa Beach in 2048,
right?
You know, so we're dropping more like devastating news that like part of California is just going to become a beautiful reef, I guess.
Right.
But so I think it shows like, you know, we have to be on the lookout now, because this is the type of things that could happen. Someone could find a time machine, replicate it, cause an explosion, you know, stuff that we really need to be worried about in the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, it has like, you know, maybe that comic book vibe to it. Like, you know, I think all time travel storylines do in a way, but this one I think was particularly fun. I'm going to totally date myself and call myself the dinosaur that I am. But so I graduated college in 92. We were still using the big floppy disks, and we had the dot matrix printers and the green screen. So when I saw the technology on that this Voyager episode, it seemed very familiar to me, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a definite sign of the times. And it's funny to think about using that technology to gain, you know, forward, to gain more presence in the tech field. But it was true. Yes. And you can see why someone like Starling would want to do that, like to want to get ahead with new technology and step out in front of all the other competitors and be the leader in developing new tech.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oof.
Crazy. So speaking of Starling, was he really a threat, or was he more of a mirror, a satirical mirror to, you know, the tech moguls, or was it just simply corporate greed for him?
I feel like kind of corporate greed is a real threat. You know, I think that I'm going to kind of cheat and answer that it's both, because not only is corporate greed sort of only adhering to people who are upper class, but it also it shows the destruction of our like Earth, because a lot of corporate technology is destroying our Earth to get it, especially now as we have discussions about AI. And then also corporate greed completely demolishes small businesses, you know, and so which are usually middle or lower class people who are trying to get their business off the ground. And then a Bezos comes along and wrecks it, or a Elon Musk or something like that. So I think that it's a little bit of both. Like, it's definitely poking fun at the like Silicon Valley, tech bros who are trying to take over the world with their technology, but it's also making a very serious indictment on like what can happen when monopolies occur and when corporate greed is really like at its most nasty.
Right.
I'm with you, Rhianna. I think also, even if Starling himself wasn't a threat, like tech-wise, I think even to the outsiders, to the other people that he's competing with too, they're going to be seeing him and like trying to advance off of what he's already built. And so I think no matter, like, yes, he's like achieving like so many amazing things because of Voyager, but because of the wreckage and everything. But I think no matter what he achieves, just that competition in the industry is so intense that he makes a huge impact on this, no matter what the result.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you that it's both, and the magnitude of the impact is immense. I mean, it is so powerful, and I like too that they explored it in the story of this, that he didn't really understand fully the technology or the damage of the technology he had access to, even though he kept pushing forward with it, and didn't understand or couldn't see any longer the potential danger and impact of putting that forward. And I think that says a lot too, because sometimes moving forward isn't always the right thing.
Yes.
When it comes to tech. So there's that message there. I think it may be subtly, but it's there.
Yeah, it makes me think about that Malcolm quote from Jurassic Park, where he talks about how like sometimes progress is like the like assault of nature, and how like that can actually, like, if you have too much progress, then you're actually ruining what nature is providing and creating naturally. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Technology, it's wild, and we need it, but
yes,
we don't always need it at a cost. Maybe that's the
and
answer.
I think there's a wall for what the benefits can do, and I think we're just spending our time searching right now, where we don't know where to stop.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be first.
Yep.
So what maybe did the episode get right or hilariously wrong in that opposite world there about the future of tech? That's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they got kind of the like private millionaire utilizing space for their own capital. That was really too right. I was like, oh God, watching this again, I'm like,
I was right on. Yeah.
That was too spot on. To a point where I'm like, Trek is such a oracle for what's gonna happen.
At times it's nails.
That's crazy, because I remember watching this for the first time in like 2000 or like 2013, 2012, something like that, and that not really resonating. And now it's like completely like we have so many privatized companies in space now. Rhianna, you were gonna keep going, I think.
Oh no, that's what I can't really. I mean, I think they did get a lot of stuff hilariously wrong, but mostly like sort of, I think, more like the weapons and such. But of course, that's because it's from like the future tech, so they got to kind of do their own thing with that.
Right. This is definitely, for me, an episode like the further distance we get away from the premiere of that episode, it seems too real or familiar. And yes, like you said, there are some things funny. Like, I don't know that we yet have I don't know this may be happening. I don't know. But like, is there someone's corporate headquarters where they've got a flight deck sitting right inside for some interstellar space travel device I don't know, maybe. I really hope not. We are not prepared at all for that. But
especially in the middle of a large metropolis.
Yes. Just randomly going to head out to space from my corporate building in 1996.
Especially because we have all these scenes where they're like out in the desert, and so like Starling has no desire. He's like, the commute, the traffic alone. Right. I'm not going out to the desert. Like,
it's just that one. It always gets me. It's the best.
It Oh, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I was going to say that the technology reminds me there was a great Voyager ad that I have seen that came out like at some point in the 90s where all of the cast are holding like a phone and like a fax machine and like they were advertising for like some technology company or something. And you should look it up. Everybody should Google it because it's hilarious to see like Tim Russ with like a stapler and it's there. Yeah, it was making me think a lot about that time.
Yeah. That's epic. I'm gonna look that one up because
it's truly phenomenal. Yeah.
We should
They're like laying on the couch. It's very very strange. It's like fascinating. Voyager it's a lot to unpack. Photo shoots. Yeah.
The 90s, I'm telling you. There was good and bad, people. Yeah. Good and bad.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. This was great because it's a great transition to talking about maybe like the tone of this episode and kind of what was at stake. So how do you feel Voyager blended humor and danger without losing credibility? And I mean, we could talk about that for the whole episode, the whole series, actually, but maybe let's just this episode.
I think for this one, it helps so much to have the Tom and Sarah Silverman subplot. Because no matter, I mean, she's genuinely in danger and for a lot of this episode. And so and also to have Tuvok there. I mean, this is a really great trio that you have on this little side journey. And I mean, Tuvok as the straight man plays like so well against Tom and Sarah Silverman. I forget what's her name in the episode.
Oh, totally escapes me.
It'll come to me. Give me a second.
I love her. So she also just like really adds so much to those scenes whenever she's a part of them. And so I think the writers like knew what they were doing and having her a great guest star.
Rain Robinson. Yeah.
Rain Robinson. Yeah. Thank you. So I think like those plots alone where you're sort of rooting for Tom and there has to be, I mean, Star Trek loves doing the time travel plot where the Star Trek person falls in love with a civilian from the century that they've traveled to. Kirk, how many women in how many decades
has he
courted?
Every decade.
Every decade. Like you think of a time travel episode, Kirk has done something or wants to with whoever's there. So it's great to have Tom be the person.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great character choice to have him kind of like falling for her, even though, that's not going to happen, or her falling for him. So yeah, I think that outweighs some of the like serious moments of this episode.
Yeah. It is about balance, right? I mean,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It reminds me sort of how we as a culture have done a lot of like memeing of things to get through dark times. I mean, half the stuff I see about like the US government right now is like a meme. And it's the way that I sometimes get my news because it's like the only way that I can like bear to look at the news is through a meme or through like, I know there's a lot of comedy news shows, like I'm thinking about like John Oliver, who like says everything he's talking about very serious stuff. And then he cracks this like hilarious joke and we're all like, ha ha ha, great. So it does make me think that that's a really great vehicle to talk about serious things is through humor. And we still do feel that lurking danger though. And I was thinking particularly with B'Elanna and Chakotay, like that part really scares me every time I watch it. Like I get very uncomfortable. The like overt racism that occurs there and the just like danger that they're both in is really scary. And then the doctor comes and is badass and hilarious and then we're all saved, and I think that that's what's really important is having the serious moments and then someone funny or someone like quipping or something to kind of help us get out of that moment. Because Future's End like is truly, in my opinion, one of the funniest episodes or episodes plural. Yeah, like it makes me laugh so much, which is funny to say because it's a very serious topic, but it works so well. Yeah.
And I do think that's where they did. So they did what Trek does best, and they take something very serious or very true that maybe is a reflection of society, usually is, but then they have a way of, yes, let's partner Tom, who's the head prankster of the ship, with Tuvok in an extremely strange situation. I mean, they're having like phaser fights right in the middle of the planetarium or whatever they were at. And
Tom's like, red alert.
Red alert. alert. And I'm like, what is happening? And they're jumping into some like white unmarked van. I don't know. It's hilarious. But
yes.
It's just, it kills me. But then you're right. Like that situation with Chote and B'Elanna where they're, you know, kidnapped, taken hostage, and it's this fringe kind of anti-government group. And you're like, ooh, that feels too real. That's really real. But then the doctor, of course, he saves the day in the best way possible, right? I love it.
So cool. I love that.
I also love the Chote and Janeway team up that we have, because I feel like there aren't too many episodes where, I mean, unless they're stranded together on the planet for some reason, they're very rarely like on away teams together. And I feel like this is a serious situation. You need a captain down there, you know, like that's how serious it is. And also it is sort of a vacation. I mean, I know they're, you know, like they're trying to figure out, they're not trying to make an impact on history, but also it's Earth. Like they did make it home, even if it's the wrong time period. And so I think it's just great to have both of them together. I love the scene in the beginning where the like skater like runs into them, and Janeway's like, that for all I know, that woman could be my great 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 grandmother. And Chakotay's like, yeah, she has your legs. And I'm like, what is happening? Like
they're flirting.
He calls her Catherine. Like they're immediately just like kind of on vacay mode, even though they're looking for this very serious situation, which is, you know, Voyager could explode and all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this a little bit yesterday too. And it always seems to me that they would bring, like, I'm not sure that in a normal Trek situation for Starfleet, that the captain and the commander, the first officer, would be the one pairing off together to go and pursue this route. Like, it should have been like Janeway and Tom and Chote and Tuvok.
Chote should be up on the ship or something.
Right. And I was like,
Janeway down there. Yeah.
This was so intentional by the writers. It was an opportunity to once again put Janeway and Chote together.
Totally.
And that's just, I mean, it just cracks me up. It's just such a blatant way of, again, even finding a way.
Everyone, all of their main crew members on this journey, and it could be Harry Kim on the ship with Neelix and Kes.
Harry's captain, Neelix is first officer. It's gonna be chaos. I don't know.
Emptied the ship,
right, right. Oh, everybody's playing clarinet. I don't know what's. It was fun though, and you know, let them play. It's all good.
Yeah.
Do you feel, so we talked about this a little bit, but do you feel like the light tone that was kind of prevailed throughout this two-parter, did it diminish kind of the ethical weight of the episode or the theme of the show or the story?
Not for me personally. I think it gives you a little bit of space to think about, like the lighter scenes give you a moment to breathe and to think about what you just saw. I don't think so. I think it works well. I'm thinking a contrast of a very similar episode in Deep Space Nine is Past Tense, where the Bell riots happen, and that is like, there's a couple of moments maybe that are funny, but that is a much more like heavy episode than this one. And so I'm thinking in contrast, the two back in time situations, for me, like I think for rewatching Future's End, Future's End is a great one for me to rewatch because it is so funny. But like we were talking about, some things do hit home, but it doesn't overpower that for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, same. I think that it has the perfect marriage between Lower Decks, which like has to sort of keep the comedic tone the whole time, which Lower Decks is one of my favorite shows. Like, no shade at all. Like, hell yeah. And Deep Space Nine, which often takes a little bit of a darker tone, decides not to joke as much, and is very intentional. Is very intentional. Wow, cannot speak. It's very intentional about how it uses its humor in that moment. And I think that like it's a perfect marriage between the two. And I think the Voyager does that really well throughout. Like, even if it's not a time travel episode, I'm even thinking about Relativity, which is like is relatively more of a serious episode. But it also is still really funny. And we have these moments where Janeway's so done with time travel and it's hilarious, and we have Seven being kind of droll and funny. So I appreciate Voyager for that because they're always really good at being so funny and so serious. And of course, there's some episodes that you just have to take seriously, like Dark Frontier, like something like that, of course. But like even so, there's got to be a funny Doctor moment, or there's got to be a funny joke from Tom. Like it just they kind of have to be, and I kind of appreciate that because they're in such a dark situation for like most of the show. They're in such pain, all of them, in different ways, and this is a great way for them to like enjoy that a little and kind of also poke fun at themselves and like we gotta sometimes things go so wrong you gotta laugh, like Pike says. So
you're right, it's true. I think it's interesting. No, please go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the characters probably were having fun also in LA too. And so it's like, no matter what situation they're in, they can probably use their future technology to get out of it. And so the stakes are a little bit lower for them too. They're like, are we really in danger in the past? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, two things for me. I have to talk about color because in 1996, and especially in this episode, they leaned into the pastels, the kind of Miami Vice vibe, and the way they were styled, and it was very 90s. I mean, the office there at Starling's headquarters, just completely 90s vibe. But you felt that there was a lightness to the episode just by looking at it, and I think that's a big part. Trek does that well. We've been lucky with a lot of great production designers and those folks who just really knock it out of the park. So I think that helps set a tone too. The other thing is talking about some of the lighthearted or comedic stuff, but in this episode, you never question that Tom could get right behind a vehicle and drive it because of his fascination throughout the series with the 20th century. Yeah. And so we just like, even as a viewer, as a fan, just to watch that, you're like, I don't even question the fact that Tom can get and drive a vehicle or hotwire a vehicle. He just knows how to do that.
Exactly. He shouldn't. Well, I was thinking about, I think this is in season 3, right? Future's End.
Yeah.
I think the beginning of season 2 or 3 is the 37s, where that truck like shows up in space. So my theory is that he really studied that truck. So he was ready to just like jump behind the wheel when he landed on Earth. He was like, no way. Yeah.
I mean, he taught Bellotta and Harry to drive like later on in season 6 and 7, I think.
Right.
So,
when they're in Fairhaven. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like holodeck
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans. Yeah. Tom is, we should do a whole conversation about Tom and Shenanigans on Voyager because
he's the leader.
He's the leader. He really is.
The actual morale officer, like no one could tell me any different. Like,
right. I think Neelix took a nod from him. I mean, really, he's like, that's where the Neelix humor came in.
Totally.
So we were talking about Janeway and Chote a little bit just then. They're undercover in LA as a duo, like some sort of wonderful detective duo from the 90s. What did this show us about their chemistry?
Oh man. I mean, so I'm like, I'm such a JC shipper, like from first watch of Voyager, I've always shipped them. And so it's a long suffering ship. But so I don't know. I love, first of all, that they coordinated. I don't know who dressed them, by the way, like if it was the doctor, but again, like we're talking about the suit, but like they're both wearing suits. Tom and Tuvok are basically like in tank tops, like Tuvok has a do-rag and he's covering up a little bit, but the contrast of like, we have two, like you said, detectives. They totally look like detectives when they're walking around. And then we have two dudes hanging out, with the Tom and Tuvok. But so I love to see like they're coordinated. Chote and Janeway are just so coordinated all the time. They're coming down in their suits and they're like walking close together. You see even behind them, like Tom and Tuvok are a normal distance apart. And I know for Voyager, like the way that they filmed it, like with the camera is, there wasn't a very wide space for the characters to be shown together. So you had to film a lot of shots with them shoulders brushing. And this is just like, for all of Voyager, you zoom out and you see like set photos and everybody's crammed into this like tiny 3-foot big space, to get this shot. And so but this is on location, and Chote and Janeway are still just glued to each other. They're in the entire time they're down there. They keep it light with each other. They're calling he's calling her Catherine. I just think these moments are important because they don't have much time to fraternize. Like, yes, there's a passing alien here or there that they both kind of dally with, but I think like being able to, I'm not really the captain of Voyager for a second. That's got to feel nice, you know. So I think it's partially just Janeway just enjoying the situation too.
Yeah. What about
I'll
you,
end
Rhianna?
my speech.
Literally, I just muted because I'm like, Ashlyn's the JC shipper, so I'm just gonna let her wax poetic
it's like
for a
dangerous
minute.
for me. So yeah.
Our love and affection series for Voyager was just Ashlyn talking, basically. Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think also it shows how well they work together, how they can read each other without having to say so much. Like, that's something that's always been really wonderful about a lot of our first officer and captain duos, is that it's kind of a, like, almost a, like, mind reading communication here, you know. I mean, I'm a huge Kirk and Spock shipper, so same kind of thing. Like those two don't need to talk; they just need to look at each other. They know what they're thinking. And same with Janeway and Chote here. And I like how they both rely on each other on times of stress, because there are a lot of episodes where they're really stressed out and they kind of turn on each other. And so I was actually really glad to see that in this moment, and as we're going to talk about in workforce later, like, they're able to kind of come together in a way that sometimes doesn't work when they're on like the confines of the ship and they're dealing with the Borg, or they're dealing with like species 8472, or they're dealing with the Equinox. You know, they have so many arguments in those. But I feel like here it really outlined how important it is to rely on each other, even if you don't quite agree with what one person's doing. I think they were both just so simpatico here that it just worked really well. And like Ashlyn said, that the chemistry, the matching outfits, the Mulder and Scully of it all, like, it was just like perfect.
I was laughing so hard at that scene where they're in the office and Janeway's like on the computer. He's teasing her like, oh, you never learned to type. And then it like brought me back to my childhood growing up, because Rhianna and I both had desktops, like big old desktop computers that we would play Sims on or whatever. And it always ends up that like one person's in the chair and the other person's squatting next to the chair. Like encouraging
another chair.
And watching. And so I was laughing so hard when Janeway's like trying to peck away and Chote just squats by the chair next to her. And I'm like, this is really capturing what it was like to be alive at this time.
Right. I love that they allowed that relationship to let them be casual and friendly or in sync with one another, but yet still get the job done. Great. And then I'm always in favor of Janeway and Chote as long as it has nothing to Chote has nothing to do with 7, because that's just a big red X. Always. So
period.
Get it away
disgusting
from me.
Someday I'm going to pay someone to re-edit the final episodes of.
We've talked about
Voyager.
this actually. Like a non J7 or a non C7 edit. Like.
Yes.
When I watch Endgame, I literally skip those scenes. I'm like, I don't need this in my life. Yeah.
Yep.
I can't.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to start like a collection to get that done.
Yes.
So we can all. But I do agree. I do think this is an episode that just once again makes a case for there was more than a friendship there. There was more than a captain and commander relationship there. And I get why it wasn't explored, but at the same time, they played into it a lot, didn't they? I mean,
they really did.
They really did.
She's always looking at his lips, and I'm like, why? You don't have to make that choice. Like they're standing so close to each other, looking at each. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
We know the truth. That's all.
We do. I mean, if you've seen Prodigy,
come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Prodigy is telling the story we all wanted. So
exactly.
I did hear. I saw a clip of Kate Mulgrew at one of the cons or whatever, and she said, "Let me tell you why we didn't." And she has this great dialogue about how if we had done that, then all of you would have pointed at Janeway and said, "See, she's just being a typical, going for the relationship, falling in love with a coworker." And she's like, "I wasn't going to allow that." And I'm like, whatever her reasons were, she stood very strong and very true to what she wanted the visual of Janeway to be to the audience. And I'll give her credit for that, because that was not an easy thing to do in the 90s by any means. So
I absolutely agree. I've heard that too, and I really support that, because you need to have Janeway be Janeway. Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean,
100%.
And I love hearing that, from the get-go, when she stepped on set, she just became that character. And when you see that from a cast saying that about the person who's going to be the leader of this crew, kind of the lead role in the cast, that's powerful. That's someone who identified with that character and brought the identity of that character from day one. And so
absolutely
agreed. Yeah,
that's why we love Voyager. One of the many reasons.
So important that she advocated. Yeah,
Kate Mulgrew. Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are several roles we could say no one else could have played this character, but that's top of the line right there.
I agree. Yep. 100%. Yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit when we started this conversation about this episode, but do we still wrestle with these same kind of tech versus ethics issues 30 years later?
Oh,
I'm just going to say hard yes, right?
Yes.
I mean, yes.
With AI, it's hard to avoid that conversation like on a daily basis. I feel like, there's a lot.
There's a lot. And I feel like every app we touch or every program, there's now an AI attachment or a component to it. And
crazy.
It's unavoidable at this stage. It's everywhere. And I have several nieces and nephews, and two of which are going into their final year of high school. And I look at them and I think their world between now and when they graduate college is going to be completely different technologically than it, much like it was for me walking out don't bend my floppy disk when I'm at college going between classes so I don't lose all my data. But for them, AI is going to be so prevalent and what that looks like. And I think that same debate, whether do you take new technology and push it forward, or do you take a step back and say, how are we ethically going to use this technology? Is this good for the world? Is it good for our planet? Is it good for our society and culture? I think those are a lot of questions we've stopped asking, unfortunately, where the decisions are being made anyways.
And those are the questions that Trek has been wanting us to ask for so long. Yes. Like this is in Trek's opinion, like in the Star Trek Bible, this is how we progress as a species, is we stop and we think about it, and then we proceed with caution with a lot of thought behind it. And we are right now not capable of that, but we're on track. I mean, it's Vulcans, we have time. We have 40 years to kind of figure it out a little bit,
I hope and pray for that to happen.
Literally.
Right now, I'm sure they're just flying by, and I'm okay with that. They should, but
they do not need to stop.
No, they're like, that's a mess. We're not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
We are on the wrong side of the universe right now. Would you trust a Silicon Valley or a tech giant right now with a time machine?
No,
Your Honor.
That's a hard no.
I'm going to say negative. Not doing
I can't think of anyone I would trust with a time machine. Like in this time,
I don't want one right now.
No, I would trust myself.
No.
Yeah. No way.
It's too much. And like we've been already rewriting history in our history books anyway. Like already education is completely,
we don't need a memory overwipe.
Right. Shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, that may be the only reason I would use a time machine, is to go back and prove that these are the things historically that really did happen.
Yes.
But then still a lot of forces working against us on that.
Then it's almost like the duck blind, you like travel back in time to just like kind of be undercover and take notes and then
take
come
pictures.
back.
Yeah. See, I told you.
Yeah, see, they did it this
all
way.
this bad stuff happened. Yeah.
The tech boom of the 90s wasn't supposed to happen. It was because of Voyager.
Totally.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a whole other episode too. Why we blame Voyager for AI. We could make a case, I think. Probably based on this two-parter. So
No, literally. I mean, even in past tense and DS9, like there is that tech boom angle as well, but it's it's supposed to take place in 2024, which that was dead on as well. Just these tech mobiles like laughing at the homeless people. I'm like, oh God, like I hate it. That's so
real.
Right. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
So
Yeah.
Too much.
Hate to see it.
Well, day by day, that's all we can do, right?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, exactly.
All right, so I'm going to flip it a little bit. If you were Henry Starling, the big tech mogul with big dreams, what would you have done differently?
I think I wouldn't have monologued all of my evil plans to anyone. This is always a villain thing, and always, from any comic book, any superhero movie, any Star Trek, is the monologuing villain. And I would keep all of that so tight. I don't think I would even tell my assistants. Like, I would tell maybe like one other person. I would not tell Rain. Like, there's just a lot of people that, like, if I were trying to be malicious and trying to, like, get my empire going, got to keep that to yourself.
Lock that down.
I think I would go to the desert and do all my testing outside of the city.
Yeah, a lot less like worry of people finding you there. Yeah.
Think more Breaking Bad, less Bill Gates, maybe. Yeah.
Did you feel like that reveal of the spaceship, like being behind his office, was like the Oz behind the curtain kind of thing? Like,
yes.
Like, oh, guys, no.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
It was kind of giving me like Doctor Who. Makes me think about Doctor Who. There's always like it just makes Starling so much more of a like goofy like villain. With those kind of details, which I guess like does keep it light.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I same thing. Do it in secrecy. Yeah, I'm with you, Rhianna. Yeah.
Don't talk about it. Build it in the desert.
Yeah.
Simple.
Boom.
Yeah, come on. How to be an arch villain 101.
And then maybe like once you're getting close, you bring in some like other scientists to like check my math. How are we looking?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's always telling if you're like recruiting all the best minds in science and bringing them together. I want to know what you're doing now, because before I didn't care. Now I want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. I did think one of Starling's redeeming factors was there at the end where he realizes he's in this ship and things are about to end not well for him. And he has that moment of realization that everything the Voyager crew has been trying to fight him on, they were spot on. And that was, we needed that moment of brevity in his.
Literally. We need more CEOs to be humbled like that. Like, truly.
Well, it's just satisfying for someone to realize, they were wrong. And you see them being wrong. That doesn't happen very often. It's just he's really getting humbled. Yeah.
It's
love it.
It very vindicating as a viewer in that moment.
It felt good. Yeah.
It did. Yeah. Okay, good. I wasn't just me.
No.
I'm going to move us ahead to talk about Workforce right now, which is a fun one. So a little overview on what Workforce was to remind us. The Voyager crew wakes up as ordinary workers in an alien society with no memory of who they are. Only a few crew members remain aware of the truth and must rescue their friends who have found peace, love, and purpose in this false life. It was wild to me, this one. I mean, from the get-go, from moment one. So it brought into play, I think, a lot of things it talks about. There's the psychology and ethics of it. There's a lot of character focus on specific characters in this two-parter. So I guess what would be like if your memories were erased, are you still you?
It's a great question. Yeah.
It's a really good question.
I was thinking this question reminds me of the Lotus Eaters episode of Strange New Worlds in season 2, where Pike and Mbega and somebody else lose their memory. La'an, yeah. I think you are still you, but just I don't know, just a different version. Like there is, I think, a core of us, but we are so shaped and warped by our circumstances that we might be a completely like unrecognizable person in different circumstances, but I still think there's a core. So I think you are still you.
Yeah.
Rhianna, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go on a quick Tuvok tangent to explain why I think Tuvok's my favorite Voyager character. So pardon me for my quick soapbox here. But I feel like with this question, I feel like some watching this would consider Tuvok to be totally out of character and like, what? He's emotional. That's not Tuvok. He's totally not himself. But I would say that's exactly who Tuvok is at his core, because we started out seeing in his young life that he was rejecting emotion, that he was sent to a Vulcan master to like in exile after his parents literally like sent him away. He left school. They pretty much like disowned him for a bit until he like got his emotions under control, and he finally gets to explore the side of himself that the Vulcan upbringing denied him, you know? And I really think that is so Tuvok at his core. And I know that there's a lot of implications that we all don't like to see about like, oh, the Black Vulcan is very angry and he has violent tendencies. And I think that that's a little bit of a racist take that Voyager did, even if it was unintentional. I've known a lot of people to complain about that. However, in this circumstance, Tuvok's just laughing. He's telling bad jokes. Right. He's kind of a dork. He's scared of needles. Like these things that we wouldn't necessarily think of Tuvok being are really Tuvok at his core and is still him, because his memories were erased and because he doesn't have to be stripped or has to be strapped to the Vulcan rhetoric of like always staying logical, never showing your emotions. And as we've learned time and time again, like Vulcans have emotions, they just choose not to show them. You know, it's not like he's born without emotions. And so for me, I feel like I was seeing Tuvok at his real self here, at his self that was denied so many times. So I definitely think that does mean that you're still you when your memories are gone. And like it's just like Ashlyn said, though, different parts of yourself are maybe don't show up as much because it's something that like you like or dislike. Right now for our book club, we're reading How to Forget, Kate Mulgrew's second memoir about her parents and her mother who passed away from Alzheimer's. And so that also brings up a lot of questions of identity and like if you forget who you are you still you? And you know, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think it's just an interesting discussion in like a real life scenario too, with people who have amnesia or who have Alzheimer's or dementia, how that can completely change them, but also there's still some things at their core, or their personality comes out in these different ways. And so, and then the other thing I'll say is love is still there. Like with Tom and B'Elanna, that love still peeked through. And I thought that was the most fascinating part of the episode, besides all the Tuvok stuff, was like the fact that Tom and B'Elanna still gravitated towards each other without ever knowing why. And that's really cool. Yeah.
I think it's also exemplified in Janeway because we see her free of the captain, free of the burden of Starfleet, of command, and she leans into her science, passions and that mindset, and is just a little bit more free and relaxed and aloof. Definitely moments we see of her when she's in command and on Voyager, but not to this extent by any means. And I think it's exactly what you're both saying, that there's this part of them that exists, but by circumstance. I mean, Janeway had to think twice about how she went after the bartender in Fairhaven because she didn't want to change the outlook of her as captain and leader of that crew. In this and Workforce, we get it's like the mirror universe, right? In a way of of their personality, just not the dark and bad side.
Yes, I love that.
Exactly. And there's that devastating line that she has when I think maybe Chakotay suggests to her, like, oh, you know, because he comes in disguise and he tries to, you know, have her recall that she needs to get back to Voyager, tries to bring her back. And so he's kind of playing along with who she thinks she is. And he says, like, oh, you know, you're so smart, like you could probably run this factory. And she's like, are you kidding? Like, I don't want all that responsibility. I don't want to be in charge of all those people. Yeah. And so I think it also just says that because even I think you have to remember, like, this is season 7 too. So this has been 7 years of her as captain, and the body remembers that. And so I think, like, her built up stress of, like, suppressing her emotions and, you know, like, just trying to be like her perfect captain self, like, that builds up over time. And so I can see her instant reaction to, do you want to be in charge of people? She's like, hell no, because
been there, done that. Yeah.
Like her brain just automatically is like, I need a break. I need to not be captain right now. And so it kills me, you know, that line. But I'm also thinking, like, she literally, when was the last time she was just Catherine? Like, it was before Voyager left the Alpha Quadrant, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
It sounds like Janeway needs to read The Body Keeps Score. Like, I think
that was the phrase I was trying to grab. So thank you, Rhianna. Mm-hmm. The body keeps the score. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It so does. And you know, losing all memories. Ooh, it's a wicked turn on the psychology there a bit of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So we have to ask then, is it ethical to forcibly return someone to a painful reality if they're really happy in the illusion? I mean,
I used to believe
tough.
Yeah, that's really tough. These are great hard-hitting questions. Thank you. I used to believe that ignorance was bliss, and then I became an activist. and then I found my most happy self and my most sad self at the same time. And I think that sort of taught me that life has its dualities, and that, like, I'm a huge fan of escapism, though. Like, this all being said, I love a good, like, disassociate for 12 hours while watching Star Trek and playing Zelda. Like, please give me that any day. But I'm also going to be out on the streets protesting, or, you know, like, community organizing or whatever is needed, because, like, that actually is what fuels my soul, is understanding the reality, even if it's a scary or sad reality, because it is the reality that we face. And it's really important to face that, because then I think, at least for me, I feel like my more authentic self. And I feel like when I just sort of put my head in the sand, it didn't focus on, I was like, I'm not political, I don't like talking about politics. For like a lot of years in my undergrad, I started to realize that part of myself was just hiding away, you know, and I just needed to acknowledge things. And then I would start to become my real, like, my whole soul. So like, my mom's like, since you became an activist, you're like the happiest I've ever seen you. I'm like, yeah, weirdly. Yeah. So that's sort of my take, is I think it's definitely maybe not ethical to forcibly return somebody, but they were already forcibly, like, removed from their old life. So I think it's kind of a reverse of that forcing, I guess. But it is still, it's a tough one. Yeah.
You basically, that last sentence you said basically was exactly what I was going to say. Just like, you have already ethically, like, if you're forcing someone to return, that's unethical, but also letting them live willingly, like, you're controlling the truth of their reality. You're holding that over them. And I feel like that's more unethical to do that, rather than to force them to return. So I would say it's better to tell them the truth.
Yeah. I agree. I think, you know, there's about being your authentic self, your true self, or finding who that is. You know, I think a lot of people have to work hard to get to that point. And if you can get to that point in this lifetime, then you want to stay there in that zone as long as possible. And if you're taken out of that and given something else that is the illusion, the life behind the curtain here again, right? But I think happiness, that is it's a fine line, and it's an individual thing, right? And I don't think anyone has the right to dictate that, especially in this situation in workforce where it was done completely for money. I mean, this is what they want to maintain the level of society and grow that they had in this alien culture. And that's not cool. It's not how you literally, right?
This is another Trek. Yeah.
This is another way that Star Trek is warning us about capitalism.
Right? Yes.
Like, you should not recruit your workers this way. Do not wipe their memories.
Yes.
This is a time that we need to write that book about how Star Trek warns us of capitalism, right?
Yeah, that would be
a series of essays, 3 volumes.
Massive volumes. Yeah, exactly.
I always joke to Rhianna, I'm like, when's your dissertation coming out on Tuvok or on whatever? Yeah. So many deep ways we could get in this. Yeah.
My notes app on the phone has so many of those, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there are thoughts. You have lots of thoughts when you watch Trek.
Well, and Jody, I want to thank you for writing these questions because it helped me to then I went back and watched Workforce again and was like, holy shit. Like, holy shoot. I can't believe that I didn't recognize how capitalism really informs this entire episode until you had kind of brought it up in these kind of questions. So I'm glad that we're looking at it in this light because I've always just looked at sort of the like amnesia part and like, how sad it is for individuals, but how sad it is for a society too, you know?
Mm-hmm. It is. And I mean, right? No, go ahead, please. That's
I was just going to say, Joffin, he's like, a lot of people don't have their memories wiped and they are like willingly coming here. And I guess you look at it, it's like, okay, they're going to give me a place to live, like a nice apartment. It's like a little socialist society almost where like they're controlling everything that they're giving you, but you do have like off times and you're kind of living in this little work city. So it's, really interesting. But Joffin chooses to stay. And even after he knows, like, they've wiped all their memories of his lover and everything, he's like, I'm down. I'm down for it. Like, it's still, it's still a life and he's still happy, I guess. So.
Again, individuality, right? So having that right to choose.
He's not being punished for that. So it's not like they're not cracking down in any way on that.
True.
Yeah. And I think, for me, it's about the gaze of the episode. And I mean, I've had that time like to watch it when it was happening, when it debuted. And then as we move along and you go back and you rewatch these, you're like, oh, well, this seems a little realer now as we continue to move forward in our own journey here. So, this one I think is very telling, this 2-parter. And, Trek does, as we talked about, does such a great job of being that mirror on a regular basis to saying, could we be better? Is there hope? Do we have these things? But I think in these types of situations where they're directly dealing with capitalism or societal hierarchy and, it feels really real, really, really real now.
Yes.
Right?
Almost uncomfortably so, which is, I think, what Star Trek loves to do. They love to make you feel a little uncomfortable about your own society. Yeah.
I think that's what makes it unique as a series across the decades, right? Is their ability to do just that, to say, I think a lot of Sisko when I think about getting uncomfortable because so much of his journey and moments, you were like, head tilt? Like, what's happening here?
And you're okay with it? You think you can live with it? Yeah.
You're like, wow, okay. But yes, and I do think, Voyager has pushed us to think like that. And the fact that it is still relevant 30 years later, they're doing something great there in the Star Trek world. So we touched on this a little bit, but is it this workforce and putting the big bulk of our main crew into this situation, is it a kinder dystopia or is it a deeper violation? Right? That's the $1 million question here.
I think that overall it's more of a violation because of the non-consensual nature of this.
Yeah.
And how I think that the US would be happy to do this, to turn their workers into happily dazed, worker drones worker lovers who are just obsessed with their job. And there's that quote at the end where Chakotay says, "Do you wish I hadn't recovered you?" And she says, "Not for a second." And so for me, that kind of solidifies that, like, this could be a violation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's about consent, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Well, I think also, I mean, Rhianna, your whole point about Tuvok, like, wiping someone's memories. There are some things that people need to know about themselves,
yes,
like Vulcans. And I mean, also, we are in the Delta Quadrant. And so this workforce has never encountered a Vulcan probably before. Right. So isn't used to the biology or anything like that. So probably like unintentional. And I'm sure that they don't want to cause their people distress, but just stuff like that. Yeah. So I definitely think it's a violation. Yeah.
Well, and you think the Tuvok we saw in Workforce, the mental prowess that he has as Tuvok, the security officer on Voyager, they're two different people. Yes. I mean, great. It is fun to see Tuvok cracking jokes and being goofy and afraid of needles. Like, he's very human.
Yes.
He's not a human. He's a full-on Vulcan. His culture is completely different than that of the human species. And that to me is, and the fact that he was able to fight that and kind of, the testament to the Vulcan power, right?
That was cool. Yeah. I love that he started to question things, because that's also Tuvok, he's a security officer. He's going to inherently start to question things that feel off to him, or that feel like something is not quite right here. Yeah, and I love, like you said, Jody, like being able to see how much discipline he has after seeing him completely uninhibited and emotional is kind of makes me respect him even more. I didn't know that was possible, but here we are. Yeah.
There's always some characters in your Star Trek crew, depending on the series, that have the ability to like recognize and like have like danger sense kind of pop out and say like, this is not right. And Tuvok is definitely one of those. 7-2 is one of those for Voyager, because she's able to be like, okay, this is sus. Like, what is going on? She's also digging deeper. So I love that her and Tuvok are both doing that. And yet you keep flashing back to Janeway and Joffin. She's got no red flags about any of it. She's having such a great time. And I think because she has no responsibility. She's just going to work, coming home, hanging out. And so like that also is a reflection of like, because I think normally she's a naturally very curious person. Like, she wants to get to the bottom of something. She, in other circumstances, would be right there next to Tuvok and trying to figure things out. Mm-hmm. But in this circumstance, could not be bothered. And if they weren't there, she might have never thought that she was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You brought up 7, and I think talking about how their innate idea of themselves came through. 7 very much so was looking for facts. She was looking for concrete evidence. Yes. And it was very 7, even though we were seeing a slightly more human side of her in this alternate reality for her character. But there was still that essence of who we knew as 7 of 9 on Voyager, just in the way that she was looking for the truth. And when she was finally confronted with the truth, she was completely into like, oh, we have to get to the bottom of this. We have to fix this.
Yes.
Even though she still wasn't sure what was going on. So I think really each of those characters really tell a fun, unique story about themselves as at their core of who they are.
Literally. And real quick to add on to that, I feel like it also is kind of like answering our question from earlier of like, if your memory's erased, are you still you? Because Seven was already, her identity was non-consensually taken from her with the Borg. And so this is like another rodeo for her. And she's like, once again, dealing with this crisis of identity that she already has been dealing with on Voyager, with like sort of becoming her human self again. Seven's my second favorite character. So I just love these two.
Oh my God.
Tuvok and Seven centric episodes are always my favorite. And I think that Seven maybe has more of that like spidey sense we're talking about, it that like ability to sense that something's going on because she's been there before in this, of course, like other very violating way with the Borg. So I just like literally just thought of that, but it really shows how her and Tuvok mirror each other so well and kind of are able to work together. I know that he mind melded with her a little, which helps obviously, but I think she still probably would have come to this conclusion when people started to all get, dysphoria syndrome. Like, come on, like, there was a lot of red flags, but it sort of has to be, you have to be willing to see them in order for them to pop up. Yeah.
I've always thought the Tuvok and Seven relationship is the most underrated friendship in Trek.
Thank you. Yes, I agree 100%. Yeah,
they were the type of friendship that only the two of them could have understood truly.
And they needed each other, like a year of hell.
Oh my gosh!
I wish they didn't forget that. Like time.
I know.
Talking about memory wipes, and time travel,
literally.
Year of Hells. It's like a 3-part episode for us to talk about. I did think, though, that there was kind of some validation given to the Tuvok and Seven relationship when he showed up at the end of Picard to,
Yes.
Man.
I screamed at the top of my lungs in those scenes. Like, incredible.
Yeah, the TV got paused quite a bit during that moment. So
I also think that some of Seven's humanity, like when I rewatch Workforce now, you see her like she's not a drone, and then in season 2, she is also like she doesn't have her drone or Borg parts because she's back in time in LA. LOL.
Wait,
and
I don't think Seven's not in Future's End though.
No, I'm talking about in Picard in season 2.
Other LA back in time.
I'm sorry. I didn't specify.
Too many LA.
Yes, 2024.
Sure, gotcha.
26 or whatever. But that Seven, they're like weirdly similar. Like they're both like displaying more confidence and like you see like more of their humanity. So I just thought that was cool to see after having rewatched that. And I'm glad you talked about Tuvok too, coming back in Picard, because that's
that's a question for Jerry Ryan. I wonder if she had any memory of Workforce when she was having to put Seven in a similar situation in that second season of Picard. That's interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if they went back and watched some of their old episodes,
Probably not. They're probably like, no.
They're like, no, it's just another
leave
job.
It there.
Like, it's all good.
Some of them do. I love Delta Flyers podcast. Yeah, but that's a lot of them. If for both of them, it's like their first time watching. Those shows.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We talked to Tim Russ earlier for this Voyager series, and he said he watched all of them. He would always watch his stuff because he looked at it as a way to learn. Like, how am I playing this? So I thought that was interesting.
That's smart.
That's cool.
I mean, but it's individual.
Totally.
Everybody learns different or wants to see, right?
Yeah. The craft is different for everyone. Yeah.
I think we've kind of hit on this, but which character adapted the fastest in this? Was it Janeway?
I'd
say so. Janeway and Tom, probably.
Yeah. But I think Tom had more of a connection to who he was, on Voyager than I think Janeway did, in a way, because he, recognized the connection with B'Elanna, and Janeway just wasn't. I don't think she was there.
Well, and I think B'Elanna too, like she didn't really settle that easily. Like just the fact that she was pregnant while she was there, like that's a weird. Again, with the memory wipes, like it doesn't help like your physical functioning, you know?
Right.
Like that would be weird. Yeah. So I can understand why B'Elanna is just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not here.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that she was still angsty. There was that angsty side to B'Elanna in this situation And they still was, that's core B'Elanna. I mean,
yeah.
They can be at a party in the mess hall and she's still not happy about it for something. So
no,
that's totally what makes her so endearing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think this has said about our crew's personalities in the way they were portrayed in Workforce in this alternate way?
I think, I mean, I feel like we've kind of talked about it already, but like, I am always just focused on Janeway. And so like, I'm just thinking about her just like being, finally able to be free. And I think the fact that she like jumps pretty quickly, like she literally moves into Joffin's place in like 3 weeks. That's pretty fast. And I know like when you're older, you're like, oh, I feel a connection. Let's do it. But still like 3 weeks, like that's pretty quick. I guess they really feel the spark. So like I'm happy for her, but I think everything that she's doing is a reaction to everything that she's been denied on Voyager. So she can't be in a relationship. She can't like take a break really. She has to be in charge of all these people and she's just doing the opposite. And so I think it's fun to see her. Like Kate Mulgrew does a great job, obviously, like playing her in these scenes. But Joffin still is a good guy. Like, so she still has like good instincts, but
yeah.
Just in a different way.
Exactly. Yeah.
I always compared Janeway in this to the Janeway, and forgive me some terrible episode names, but where she and Chakotay are having to be put on the planet because they can't survive.
Resolutions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it takes Janeway so long to let go of being that captain. And then when she does, she's planting gardens, taking baths. She's all in. Yes. And she's surprised when Voyager comes back. Like there's that, you see that on her face. Like I've got it switch, boom, I'm right back into captain mode. Yeah. And that was her just still being Janeway, still being, in charge, but realizing, oh, I've got to turn that off if I'm going to survive here on this planet. And then all of a sudden being back in. So it was like she took the Workforce journey in a way on that. In that episode too.
Yeah, she was domestic for a little bit, just enjoying the small things in life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Well, and this makes me wonder if Janeway has a natural ability to adapt or if she is kind of forcing herself to adapt because of her like captaincy. And I think it probably is the latter because it seems like, she was so easy to adapt in Workforce, but that's because her memory was wiped, So I think she wasn't quite adapting. She was just living. And so it seems like when those stressors are taken away and when the burden of being captain is taken away, she's less adaptable in a way. But like, and I think as captain, she sort of forces herself to just like, hey, roll with the punches on the next, and I mean, this is her first freaking captaincy like ever is this entire mission that was supposed to just go to the Badlands and back, and so it kind of makes sense to me that she would kind of maybe more force herself. I don't know, Ashlyn, you're kind of the resident Janeway scholar, so what do you think?
It's kind of a tough call. I think that like as a captain, extremely adaptable, like you're saying, like within the parameters of being a captain, she can, any situation that comes at her, she already has 3 ideas and she's asking the crew which one's the best one. But I think when it comes to like real life things, like you think about how she, in Endgame, she poorly adapted to returning home. And that is a much more real, for her, very personal adaptation. She couldn't stay home, so she built a time machine to go back and erase everybody's lives. Like that's how poorly she adapted to coming home. So I think like when it's real and when it's about her, she really struggles with change. But like as a captain, that's just her job. So she has to do anything she can for her crew. And I think those like limits are off for her.
I don't know. Okay, waiting for your thesis, Ashley, on Janeway.
You've got an excellent start to it right there. I'm telling you.
Perfect. That's your opening line. Yeah.
Right there. First paragraph done. So you're good. Boom. No, but I do agree with you both. I think that I just, there's a core, right? That's really where we're at, is that there's a core to who they are. And I think we have to stay true to that in some way or some form. I do have to think about Chote a little bit, in that he was trying so hard to, at all costs, to get this crew back on the ship. And I think that's something he wanted, but he felt that it would be what Janeway would want. And he did everything he could, as subtly and not so subtly, to get Janeway to understand that she was a captain of a crew in a starship, and she just wasn't having it. Like, she was just like, it took her so long. And I think it was that was a surprise in this episode, is Janeway, and how she didn't have that snapback like she does in Resolutions, right? Like, it's not like flip of the switch, I've got to be captain again. No, she was like, that wouldn't be me, right? I wouldn't do that. I'm not a captain. I don't want to lead people.
Totally. Well, I think like their dynamic too has been very established, that like if they're in a strange situation together, one of them, like, they know each other so well, they can just do a little, they like understand the vibe once they're together.
Yes.
Like, so I think Chote went into the situation thinking, all right, I'm just gonna, kind of ring some bells for her, and then she'll be back on the ship in no time. And the fact that she's ready to call the guard, she's afraid of him at first. She's really does not want anything to do with him. But then, he can't convince her about his reality, but I think she does innately trust him. And they have, those scenes together, like in her dark apartment. Whoa. Where she's, he's been injured. She's got the dermal regenerator like on his face, that she's like helping him recover. And I think that she does sense that she trusts him, and she's like, I don't know. I don't know why, but like, there's something about people. And so I think when you're talking about memory loss, like, I think if I lost my memory and I saw Rhianna, I would be like, I don't know her, but like, it's like, I feel like there'd be something about just like being around the people who you're around a lot, or like care about a lot, or like interact with all the time. That does something, because it's chemical. So I think he doesn't accomplish what he wants by like convincing her to come back to the ship, but I think he does start to get her to think maybe something is wrong, because I have some question marks finally.
Well, it makes me think too that Chote like was able to get through to her because he's showing how much he trusts her. And I think Janeway probably knows herself well enough to be like, oh, wow, well, I don't let people in that easily. I know Jaffin seems like she let him in easily, but she kind of wasn't at first. She was very like, okay, we're just going to dinner, right? Again? You want to go to dinner again? Like, are you sure? She was kind of course, they had to fast roll this because it's not a movie, as we all wish it were. Most Voyager two-parters, I want to be a movie. But I feel like for this, her realizing that Chote trusts her implicitly is kind of like oh shit, okay, maybe this guy is onto something here, and maybe he knows me better than I know myself, which is true in this case. But I think for Chote also, he gets to see Janeway in a new and frankly devastating light, to understand her deeper and understand her longings beyond her captaincy. And that's something that is kind of devastating to him, because he's always seen her as this larger than life captain who will put her crew first, never really puts herself first in any scenario except for in Resolutions. And then that was snatched away from them both.
Right.
So, it just breaks my heart, especially thinking about, we're on our cave series for the pod. And we're talking about Basics last week, and how Janeway is instantly in Basics Part 2, like, full-on captain. Her entire crew is stranded, similar to how Workforce, like literally everyone is on this planet stranded, and she is ready. Like, she is finding the best shelter. They're cutting her hair. She's telling them to eat worms, she is on it, and she is ready to take care of her crew. And so I think when Chote sees that she doesn't even like know her crew or have that capacity for care, for that angle, he gets to see how she cares for herself, and that's really cool to watch the two of them. Yeah.
It speaks to a lot about their bond, not just as captain and commander, but as Janeway and Chote as individuals. And so, there they are again, playing with the Janeway Chote thing. I mean,
they love to torture us. Yeah.
Especially season 7 is extra torturous because, we have Shattered in this season.
Oh man, yes.
Is it Killing Game? Or maybe that's season 6.
Season 6.
That's the same thing. Their memories wiped.
Yeah.
Literally. You're right. I forgot.
And then
that's right.
Janeway's, that's kind of like the parallel one because Janeway gets her memory back and Chote thinks he's a soldier and he's like low-key hitting on her
all the time.
Yeah. When he lost his memory. Anyway.
Another great white suit Janeway moment, by the way.
Oh, right.
Oh, yes. I love a power pantsuit.
Yeah. That was her alternate reality. She was always in the white power suit. Yeah.
Totally.
Funny. Does Workforce then kind of, in a way, parallel real world can't even talk, burnout? Or is it just the idea of escapism?
I might cheat again and say both.
Yeah.
I think that there's hints of worker burnout here and the just keep smiling nature of capitalism and how I'm currently job hunting right now, which is a living nightmare and I hate it. And the world's awful right now because I stake a lot of my own value on being an employed person. And I only have this current job until June. And so I'm like in this mad scramble, terrifying, capitalist hellscape. And so it made me think a lot about how there's all of those cliches about if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, or you're supposed to love your work and you're not supposed to just working this 9 to 5, you got to live, love, laugh your work, and all this kind of BS stuff that keeps the capitalist machine running. Yeah. And I think that the seduction of escapism is there for a lot of us because, my wife tells me all the time, she's like, if I could never work again, I would be so happy. It would literally fulfill my whole life to not ever have to work and go in the office again. And for me, I'm like, if I could work again, it would fulfill my whole life because I feel like a non-person without being in work. And so I think it's really interesting to see both of us kind of taking capitalism at its different angle and either really fighting against it, or I'm kind of just want to be a part of it because I want to be able to support my family in this kind of, I don't know, heteronormative way that I feel like I'm gotta be the breadwinner or whatever. But it's just very interesting. And it made me think a lot about how much everyone's kind of a brainwashed, happy, I love work person in this, and how that does, in a way, kind of feature work burnout because there is so much of that falseness of people. There's always these jokes about the random small talk you have with your coworkers and you just want to die a little. You're like, this is just so awful. Can we all just shush? No one means anything. No one is actually saying what they mean at work a lot of the time. And maybe, if you're blessed to have a great work environment, awesome, happy for you, but I've worked in so many toxic work environments that I just am not used to that. And so, it's hard to find genuine people in your workplace. And that's why I'm I'm not going to ever be friends with people I work with, that kind of stuff. So the fact that this whole society is built off of a worker capitalism force is so prone to that burnout, but it's they're never allowed to say that it's burnout or allowed to feel it. They just have to keep going, which is kind of what happens to us. We don't have, as workers in the US especially, we don't have a lot of time off, either for leave or for sick leave. My friend who's from the UK was absolutely shocked to hear how little sick leave we get and how little bereavement leave, how little maternity leave, all this stuff, because she gets weeks on ends of leave in the UK. And I know they have their own problems too. Every society in capitalism has their own problems. But anyway, that's my long statement.
It's fair. And I think Workforce does an interesting thing because we know that the actual workers on this planet, they've been medicated. They're being injected to forget that previous life, but also to love working and be driven by working. And that's eyes on target, right? Just keep showing up to work and doing a good job and doing your best and like it.
Well, right? And it's interesting because if you think about like what are the things that stress you out, like as a person, like, you know, bills stress you out. And so if you work somewhere where you don't have to pay any bills, like your housing is covered, your food is covered, like all of this stuff is covered. So I know they're being like drugged to like, you know, they want to work there and everything. But I do think like that also could be a nice life as long as you don't, you know, as long as you don't hate your job. And, you know, it's always you have to have 2 out of the 3, like love your job, love your coworkers, have good pay. But I think that is not a bad situation, like on paper, you know. It's like maybe I would take that chance to like move to somewhere new if like all of my stuff was paid for and I just had to like go to work. Then you make friends, like there's kind of a city going on. Like it does sound kind of cool. Like to be honest. So maybe I'm just one of those, like maybe I end up with Joffin at the work.
You two would have a great
planet.
time. Yeah.
I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to worry about my troubles. I'm just gonna like peace out. So but I don't know. Yeah.
It's interesting to me because the Federation is not based on money, right? Like there's no money in that. There's no idea of capitalism is gone, but yet they're still inspired to pursue their interest and to work to better themselves and the society as a whole. So there is this kind of mirror to workforce and the Federation, even though the workforce is driven in a capitalist, you know, perspective, the Federation, non-capitalist society, but the happiness is still a core value to make each of those work. Yes. Are you a happy worker? Happy workers, more product, more income, better life. Federation, find your passion, pursue it, continue to work hard, better life. I mean, that's right. It's a scary like mirror universe in a way. And I wonder, I don't know if that was part of the writer's room when they were doing that. Like, this is our capitalist Federation at work here? I don't know. But
I mean, it gives me parallels because my husband's in the Air Force. He plays the trumpet at the band out here. And I mean, that is kind of what the military is, especially for like, if you're an 18-year-old coming in, you like have to live on base. So you're coming in, your food, I mean, you have to pay for your food, but you get a stipend. You're getting paid. You have like a little city that you're kind of living in. The base is like a little town. And you can, of course, like leave and do whatever. But I mean, that's something that is, you know, infamous in the American military, is that they will like give you a lot of benefits. And, you know, we have a lot of benefits that we have because he's in the military. And are they worker drones? I mean, question mark, you know, like, so I don't know. There are shades of this type of setup. I mean, and you look at like different countries that exist under socialism, like that's, you know, it's all kind of like kind of cuddling with each other, but
definite parallels.
To think about.
Totally. Yeah. Wow. Those are great.
I don't know. Now we're like deep in the woods here in this episode. I'm like, what are they trying to say?
You know? I know. There's more to it, I think. I think there's more to it.
This one's brilliant because it's making me think a lot more about like society as a whole and what the writers were trying to say, both in that time period, but also just like in general about our society.
I mean, we've seen Star Trek deal with capitalism and, you know, in so many ways and so many varieties.
Totally.
You know, even in universe with the Ferengi, who are completely built on money and capitalistic ventures. So it's definitely a prevalent part. Obviously, it's a prevalent part in how our society and cultures on Earth are built around that same premise. So, I think it's played into this writing of this episode too. It had to.
Totally agreed. Yeah.
So if you're in workforce, would you stay?
No. I think as much as I want a job, no.
Well, and also, like, especially once you unearth the fact that they, like, just capture crews full of people and bring them down, like, that's
right?
If they're doing that to others, what are they doing to me? You know, get out of there. I would not stay.
Yeah, there is a ethics line there that they definitely crossed big time.
Yeah, it's giving Big Brother a little bit, like
hypercapitalism,
shows how far that they're willing to go to get compliant worker drones, kidnapping, gaslighting, memory wiping, invasive procedures. A lot of that isn't too far off to what we're dealing with in the US in these varied ways. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really like how the US is running it. I know wouldn't like how the workforce runs it. There is a curfew and stuff too, which kind of freaked me out.
Yeah,
so it does show that there's a lot of like repression in how you can conduct your free time as well.
Yeah, Big Brother, as you said earlier, and that governing body just always controlling. I mean, just recently finished Andor, like so many of us did, and that vibe of shifting cultures and planets to abide by this way. Strong vibes. We can't leave workforce without saying the Doctor also played a role in this one in saving the day once again. So he's continuing to be the unsung hero there of Voyager in a way, as he so often was.
I love that this came out of Tinker Tenor Doctor Spy, of the ECH. Like, I love that this came to fruition because I thought that would be a one-off, and then I remembered, of course, he's like now has the official ECH codes. That's amazing.
Right. I mean, he's empowered, right? He's like, I can do this. I can.
I mean, why not? It's only Harry, Chote, and the Doctor on Voyager.
On the whole ship, And
Who thought that was going to be the trio to save the day?
Too.
Right.
Yeah, forgot about Neelix.
I love that in these 2 episodes, the Doctor goes from gaining his mobile emitter to gaining his ECH status. Like, that's kind of cool. Like, both empowering moments for him.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, 2-parters. They're expanding the Doctor's lore.
Yeah.
They may not always seem like they go together, but they do. These episodes.
Little do we know.
So both of these episodes toy with reality, obviously. One through time travel, one through memory manipulation. Which had the greater emotional impact?
For me, it's workforce.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I don't know, I just read so much into Janeway, and
there was a lot to do in that.
And so I think just watching her story in workforce is like it impacts me more. Just like the idea of having to return, like, can you imagine the weight when she remembers she's a captain? She's like, oh God, I have to do this. I have to get them all home again. Like and they don't show that. Like so many Voyager episodes, it ends way before we get to see like
Captain's log supplemental. Everyone's traumatized, but they'll be fine in a few weeks.
No ship's counselor on board. Just get through it, people.
Just raw. So for me, I think like the emotional impact of what the characters go through, it impacts me more than at least emotionally. Like I love watching Future's End for a good time, but I think if I don't watch Workforce for a good time. For like I do as a character study for me.
And when you're writing fan fiction.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. That's
that one's loaded. Cool. That one's
absolutely
loaded.
Yeah,
I agree. I think this one hits harder emotionally, but same, like Future's End has more watchability for me, but also because I'm such a big Tuvok and Seven stan, there's something really emotional about what they go through, both individually and together in this episode. It's just incredible and heart-wrenching.
Yeah. I think in Future's End, because it has that humorous side to it and that kind of tongue-in-cheek way of approaching the situation, there's more brevity throughout that two-parter. And this one deals with some heavy stuff from from the get-go. I mean, it's just the heart of the storyline. And so, yeah, I think that I agree with you both that this one's heavy. Workforce is a heavy episode. It goes to like past tense and things like that. It's in that same category for me.
Yeah, I think the funniest line in Workforce is when Harry's like, "Oh, this smells worse than the meat nectar." Like, that opening is really funny for me.
Right. Yes. And that's
before they know what's happening.
Right. We expect that from those characters too. Like Harry and Neelix. That it was a good group to leave back on the ship.
Iconic group. Yeah.
Iconic.
Harry's tummy ache. Like.
Oh, right. Yeah. It was just brilliant. That was good. It was brilliant. I love it. I always thought with Janeway, like in that moment of transition for her between leaving the planet and that life and going back to the ship, like there was a lot of time spent in her ready room drinking a lot of coffee. Like that would have been her like, I got to get this back on target, and
her therapy.
Yeah, therapy.
I gotta lock in again. Yeah, yeah. I gotta focus.
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean, Deanna Troi had chocolate. Janeway's got her black coffee. So
that's so true.
Yeah. You got to deal with the heavy stuff some way, and that was their outlet.
Felix has got his Loyola root. Yeah.
Oh, everything Loyola root. Everything. Funny. What do these stories say about the nature of identity?
So I was thinking about this one, and we didn't really talk too much about what's his name, Paxton, the guy, the time traveler from Future's End, who comes from the 29th century. Captain Braxton. Because he goes through his own identity crisis when he's stranded on Earth for 30 years. Can do wonders to our Star Trek characters. And I mean, he's like, I appreciate at least that he's like trying not to make an impact in the timeline. So it seems like he's just like been homeless, been like chilling, and seemingly like losing his mind as he goes. But you look at him at the beginning of the episode when he first warns Janeway, he's very like shaven and put together, and he's just on the job. And then you see him absolutely like losing his mind when he's tanned, he's like has a huge beard, he's really hardened, and he keeps calling, he's like, "Oh, you post-capitalist society," like he hates it. And I think this bitterness towards Janeway has really changed him. So, and we know throughout the series, like there's I think it's Relativity where we see him again with Seven. The time agents recruit Seven to deal with Braxton because he's just like a loose cannon.
Crazy.
He has this vendetta against Janeway. And so I think it's interesting just to see like him, he doesn't have his memory wiped or anything, but he becomes a completely different person because of what happened and because of his time on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
he's like,
that's a great point.
Yeah, he really had the biggest change in that episode as a character, right? It almost hints to the change of the whole crew experienced in Workforce. I mean, that kind of opposite personality, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Sorry, Jody.
No, please go ahead.
I was thinking also that at least, especially in Workforce, but in both, it also shows us a lot about what our relationships, like how our relationships are tied to our identity, and I'm thinking, of course, about Janeway Chote in both these episodes, but also Tom and B'Elanna, particularly in Workforce, and how much our capacity to care for people is at our core, because even when Janeway doesn't know who the hell Chote is and why he's bleeding in her house, she still goes to get the dermal regenerator.
Right.
She still goes to fix him up. She has this at her core, this capacity to care for people, and similar with Tuvok, he at his core wants to figure out the like truths of the universe, the truths of the things going on between this like subterfuge. Both in, he's kind of in the main investigation team in Future's End as well.
Right.
And so I think that really is cool because we get to see all their individual ways of how they care for people, even when they don't really know who they are or don't have or they're in a completely different timeline and have, other priorities. They're still caring, and they're still especially, I'm thinking Chote and B'Elanna, in Future's End, how like they're kind of joking around like, oh, what would we do if we get stuck here? You know, like B'Elanna's like, I don't know if many people would want a Klingon worker or whatever. And and Chakotay's like, maybe I'll go find my tribe, you know, this or that. But they kind of both are making sure that the other's going to be okay if they can't get back home, which I love that scene. It's a really underrated scene. Yeah.
It is. It is. And it says a lot about them as characters too, right? That there's that bond. We're back to that word, you know, that these people, like Janeway's taking care of Chakotay and Workforce. I don't know. I mean, yes, she's caring. She's going to take care of another person, but she goes to pretty far extremes to help heal him in that. Yeah. And that says a lot about their bond. And again, with Chote and B'Elanna and Future's End, my gosh, that whole scene is just fantastic because they're like, look, this is what we each could do if we're stuck here for eternity.
Totally.
It's just beautiful. Yeah. Beautifully done. Voyager's known for its crew's adaptability. I mean, 7 seasons stranded in the Delta Quadrant. If they weren't adapting, and it makes me think too with Workforce, if Workforce had happened at the beginning of their time in the Delta Quadrant, I don't think there would have been the eagerness to come back to the ship. True. So it's a little bit interesting.
I wonder if Janeway would have given them the same choice that she gave them for the 37s. Like, do anyone want to stay? Like, if you want, you know?
Yeah.
I have to feel like she would have, because Janeway at that time did, right? Like during that episode of 37s. Yeah. I think their adaptability really highlights Starfleet's values. And I think that's a big part of it. But do you think that's integral to the way that they behaved and came out of both of these two-parters in these scenarios?
I'd say yes and no. I mean, we have a whole slew of Maquis members here who completely rejected Starfleet's values, or at least a lot of their values. And I think that still, at their core and at the core of the Voyager crew specifically, is to embrace love and curiosity over hostility and mistrust. And I think that time and again, no pun intended, there's like a need for the Voyager crew to come together in community and to solve things together as a team. And I love this too, because even though we don't see a lot of our like other crew members that aren't the bridge crew, we still get glimpses of them. We know about the Delaney sisters. We know about Samantha Wildman. We know about, you know, these various Maquis members, Shell and the misfits that Tuvok trains, you know, everyone like that. Like, we get a lot of these side characters because there's only, you know, Ashlyn, you might know the full number of the crew count. I know Kate Mulgrew says it a lot, actually.
I know she says it at cons. It's like 164 or something.
Yeah, something like that. And so that's not a lot of people, but it is their own community that they've built and their own family, of course, that they talk about a lot. And so I think that leading with love and curiosity is really at their core. And of course, that's a core of Starfleet, but I think it has to be more when you're in the Delta Quadrant, because there's a lot of unperceived, like, you don't know a lot about the enemies here. You don't have a clue if someone's going to hurt you or harm you, but they always come forward with the trust and respect that they're going to, you know, like, love, that they're going to care for these people. And like, even when people hurt them, they're like, well, they hurt them because we were in their space, or because we accidentally found them in a cave when we thought it was an abandoned cave, you know, or something like that, you know. So I really appreciate that about the crew, which I think is harder to find in other just like Alpha Quadrant Starfleet crews, because they haven't gone through all of these trials and tribulations together. No pun intended.
Nice. Well done. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, Ashley, go.
I was just going to say, I agree. I think that when you're in a time of crisis, or when these Starfleet people they fall back on their training, and the Starfleet training inherently has it built in to be adaptable and to, you know, don't leave a person behind, like, treat them, like, all of the adaptability is built in, I think, to this training. And even the Maquis people, even if they didn't make it through Starfleet Academy, I think that, like, 911, this is an emergency, what do we do? That helps them get through all of these episodes. And that's how Janeway makes it home, I think, is by maintaining the the order, by maintaining like, this is what we do. We're following our rules that we all promise to follow. Let's just work together to get home. And I think it works really well in the roles for them to be adaptable, because there are so many people you can have different people doing different things.
Starfleet training, there's a lot to be said for it, right? I mean, that's really what and it's more than just a career. I think there's a lifestyle to it and a personality to it.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're in a universe where you can bend minds and time. Everything can be rewritten. What anchors a person to themselves, to their true core?
I mean, I'm going to go cheesy here and say love, I think throughout all of this, Tom being so protective of B'Elanna without even knowing her, even just Tom being protective of Rain Robinson without barely knowing her. And maybe that's more like attraction, but still at its core, it's a love for people, for like a love for a future that they want to be able to see its fruition of, in Future's End. And also, let's be real, love between Janeway and Chote, whether we see it as platonic or romantic or somewhere in between, there is this willingness that Janeway has to help Chote and to have each other's backs, even when things are really tough or things are like kind of inconceivably hard, like when we're forced, like Chote is really up against a huge wall here with Janeway's stubbornness, but they always are able to like, at least this is how I feel as a person who is always like been very empathetic, is like leading with love is kind of like my most important trait in my opinion, because like it's how I'm able to see past a lot of people's thorns that they put up, or a lot of people's walls, and I'm like, oh, but I love this person, but I love people as a whole. And I think that though I can be a pessimist, like people at their core do love things, and they love deeply in these certain ways, and sometimes that deep love can make them act like assholes, or can make them kind of frustrating to be around, but it's often because they love so fiercely. And I think that is the case here. I mean, especially this crew, my God, they're just like brimming with love for each other, and they would do anything, sacrifice anything for the like, youngest crew member to the oldest crew member, like anyone they would do anything for. And I love that about them.
Yeah.
I think just connections is what anchors a person to their true selves. It's the connections we have with our people. I think about that. Even just myself, I have in my life gone through so many periods of like people pleasing, and that's like me adapting my personality to please those around me. And I think about like who I am when I don't have to people please. And sometimes it's hard to remember because I've adapted for so long. And what reminds me about who I am is like my husband, my sister, like the people who are close to me, my mom, and they remind me who I am, and that I don't have to be anybody else when I'm with them. So I think that's the case when your memory's gone as well. Or yeah.
I think, Star Trek does a wonderful job of this as a whole, but it really rings to about found family and the bond and connections you have, the love that you have for these people, and that you can find those connections anywhere if you're open to it and empathetic and leading your best life, right? That you can put your best self forward. And I think Trek does that as a whole really well, but I think Voyager's unique because of their situation being cut off from the Alpha Quadrant as a whole, and Starfleet, isn't there to come in and help save the day all the time. They have each other, and their bonds maybe are a little bit stronger than what we see in some of the other series. So I agree with you both. I think it's a beautiful thing to have a series or a universe out there in Trek to remind us of those moments.
Yes, the found family, that's really all like the core for me, my favorite part of Trek. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that every crew is that, right? In this series. And we see all the relationships, we see all the complications, we see all the personalities, and it's just fun. It's another reflection of that we can all spend some time learning from, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh.
Would you rather live in a blissful lie or a difficult truth?
Give me that difficult truth.
Difficult truth.
Just
give it here.
Just bring it.
You got to build up from somewhere, and it's got to be on solid ground. Yeah.
We learned
build
from
up
it
on a lie.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Well, see, that was easy, right?
Yeah.
Boom.
I think we face that as humans, as individuals, and I think we have moments of the blissful lie, and there's
totally
right. But I mean, the reality is you've got to face it and learn and grow. So
yes, and that's what I love about Star Trek is that it helps us face those difficult truths through that sci-fi lens. So it's a little bit more palatable, a little bit like I've learned a lot about myself through rewatching Star Trek, a billion times over in all of these different ways and periods of my life. Yeah.
I learned you don't want to live a blissful lie just by watching Shore Leave from the original series, because you could be thinking you're living on a beautiful paradise planet. Boom. A night kills
changes.
You dead in the
when
heart.
the nights attack.
There's a difficult truth that you should know about that planet.
Love that.
It's so true. It's so true. I think a lot too about the Next Generation's First Contact movie. Right.
Yes.
When we see Geordi and members of the crew kind of fanning out overseeing Cochrane. He's the inventor of warp. Like this is their hero.
Oh, Geordi,
right. And they just totally out of character. You see them in a different light, but yet still so true to who they are, and having to kind of be checked by Riker and Picard to be like, guys, we can't do this. We gotta stay. We got a job to do here. This is yes. Don't tell him there's a school named after him.
Exactly.
And Cochrane has to live with the difficult truths of the fear of being known. He has to realize that he's going to become famous, and that scares him a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Don't tell him about the statue.
Don't tell him. Yeah. And I think that's what Janeway had to face too when she came out of workforce, and even seeing the threat of the technology being used to shift the future and the past. I think those moments spent drinking excess of coffee and sitting in her ready room, recovering without a counselor on board.
And think about the log she had to submit to Starfleet. So when they get home, they finally get to year 3 and they're like, Future's End, they're like, the tech boom was because of Voyager? I mean, right. How do you
explain that?
Yeah, and that's just one
Temporal
story.
Investigations is like, oh god.
When people always say they wanted more of Voyager, or they wanted to see more of them coming home, I'm always like, it would have been 3 years of them poring over the logs.
Yes, and in a lot of briefings. Yeah,
it's a lot of meetings. Janeway would have just been in meetings. She would have been doing nothing. She would have been going crazy. Literally. So her logs, that should be a 12-volume set for us to read.
It should be.
Janeway's logs from the Delta
Narrated
Quadrant.
by Kate Mulgrew. Let's go.
Sign me up for that.
Let's go.
Who do we call?
Literally, let's go.
Well, thank you both. This has been a fascinating conversation. I've loved it.
Thank you for creating these wonderful conversation points. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to have done it. I'll anything for an excuse to chat about Voyager in any way, shape, or form. So I appreciate it, though. Well, that brings us to an end of this week's deep dive into Future's End and Workforce. 2 stories that remind us Star Trek isn't just about warp drives and phasers. It's about who we are when the timeline shifts and when the truth is rewritten. Huge thanks to the Duras Sisters for joining this conversation, unpacking the ethics of memory, the cost of identity, and why the past always seems to pull us back in. If you enjoyed today's episode, help keep the spirit of Voyager alive. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to the Clonestar Podcast channel on YouTube. Every share, every comment, every connection builds the next chapter of this incredible journey. Until next time, remember, in space, time is never linear. And sometimes you are the fixed point. I'm Jody Pickens, and on behalf of the Clonestar Podcast, live long and prosper.